Hello everyone, Tom with Capo Feathers. Today on the channel, I am going to talk about 10 lead-off tracks from 1969 that became part of my DNA. So in 1969, I was 4 years old. I had a brother that was 14 years older than me, another sister that was 12 years older than me, and another sister that was 6.5 years older than me. So I was surrounded by adults, surrounded by all this adult music, shall we say. So if it wasn't my mom playing her Herb Alpert albums, it was my brother playing all the new music that was coming out at that time. So my earliest memory, one of my earliest memories of this particular part of my life at 4 years old was basically watching cartoons, taking naps, and listening to albums with my brother in the living room. And I was drawn at even an earlier age to just the 45s that he would buy, the labels spinning around. There was something so magical about hearing these disembodied voices coming out of the speaker. So after a while, I started looking at album covers, when he would play albums in the living room. And that's when I started really noticing like album cover art and then the album labels and the different grooves and how long the songs were within the grooves. So anyway, one of my DNA songs from 1969 is Cinnamon Girl from Neil Young. I remember distinctively at some point in 1969, I think it was the end of 69, I think that's when this album came out. And one of my earliest memories of going to the record store with my brother, and he bought this record and a few other ones, but this one kind of stood out to me, just the cover, just the way it looked and everything. And I remember distinctively coming home, him taking the wrapper off the record, placing the needle on the record, and hearing for the first time Cinnamon Girl. And just going, wow, For a 4-year-old, it was just kind of like, it's like another world, hearing this music. But I always distinctly remember hearing that guitar riff and those backup vocals. And to this day, it is one of the most important songs I ever heard in my entire life. It's still in my DNA. I still love it to this day. And all 10 songs I'm going to feature here in this video today are still magical to me. They never get old, and they are definitely part of my DNA. Cinnamon Girl is one of them. 1969 from Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere. Of course, there were other songs on this album too that really appealed to me, like Cowgirl in the Sand, So Melodic, and Down by the River. Those were other ones that really perked up my ears at a very young age. But Cinnamon Girl, that opening track, will always be part of my DNA. Another one too, my brother played continually, and I heard this right when it came out in 1969, is Chicago Transit Authority's first album. That first track, Introduction, oh my God, how many times did I hear that as a kid, right? That amazing, gritty, bluesy vocal from Terry Kath, and that guitar playing, a guitar player that even Jimi Hendrix said was one of the greatest guitar players on earth. And not only just the song Introduction and all the complexities that went along with it, that whole first side of Chicago Transit Authority, Introduction, does anybody really know what time it is, followed by Beginnings, absolute pure frigging magic. And so part of my DNA. This album in general, so part of my DNA growing up with this. And of course, Introduction, with the horn section. I mean, just Chicago is just an amazing band in the beginning. It's just amazing how they metamorphosized into like this soft rock Air Supply kind of band in the mid 70s. But those first couple of Chicago albums, including this one, are just absolute classics. So Introduction from the first Chicago album, definitely part of my DNA. Another one too, heard a lot, 4 years old, 5 years old when this album came out, is Darkness, Darkness from the Youngbloods' Elephant Mountain from 1969. Oh my God, what a track this is. I mean, this is one of my favorite tracks of all time. If I had to compile a favorite tracks of all time, this would definitely be in the top 40. Starting off with that fiddle, violin, whatever it is, and that incredible guitar playing by guitarist. The guitarist's name, Banana. And that really cool vocal by Jesse Colin Young. At this point, they were just a 3-piece band. This sounds a lot different than the previous couple of Youngbloods albums. They're definitely like contributing more like jazz influences in here. You hear a lot of like electric piano and stuff. But that opening track, Darkness, Darkness, and the way it picks up and really gets into it in the middle section and rocks, and that ending is so cathartic. Oh my God, so great. The vocal by Jesse Colin Young, The guitar playing by Banana, an absolute classic song from 1969. Doesn't get a lot of airplay. It did a little bit back in the past, but just if you've never heard this song, Darkness, Darkness, or this album, check it out. Elephant Mountain by the Youngbloods. Definitely part of my DNA forever. I still get excited when I hear that opening of Darkness, Darkness with the violin. Incredible stuff. And of course, I remember the first time I heard Come Together by the Beatles from Abbey Road. My sister picked up this album. And of course, we had a few other Beatle albums in the collection. At the time, I remember hearing Magical Mystery Tour from an early age and hearing the soundtrack of Help and a few others. But I remember distinctively when this album came out, and remember just seeing that cover and knowing what the Beatles looked like on previous covers. They looked nothing like they did in the past. And I remember just how incredible this album cover looked, and the back as well with this girl walking by. But I remember distinctly hearing that first track come together with that Shoot Me and that drum pattern by Ringo, how distinctive it was. And I remember just hearing side 2 and how magical that was with Because and You Never Give Me Your Money and that whole suite of songs. So yeah, Come Together is definitely a DNA track for me from 1969. It's played to death, but it's one of those songs I never get tired of it. And of course, just an incredible Lennon vocal. Incredible track, Come Together by the Beatles, Abbey Road. Another one too, heard a lot from a very young age. At 4 years old, this album was played continually in the house. The first CSN album and the song Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. There was a period back in the 80s when classic rock came into play. They were just playing this song to death. But over time, I started really digging this song again. It's so incredibly put together, well written by Stephen Stills. All the different parts and those harmonies. There's a lot. The live version from Woodstock is really incredible with just the 3 singers and the guitars without all the studio embellishments. Incredible track. Stephen Stills, what an amazing songwriter. Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. So many great songs. Bluebird, Rock and Roll Woman, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, one of his top songs. And just an absolute classic. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes from Crosby, Stills, and Nash's debut. And not to mention, I mean, so many great songs on here. Wooden Ships, Pre-Road Downs, Long Time Gone. Just a real classic album here. Crosby, Stills, and Nash, Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. Another one, too. My brother was a huge fan and sister of Poco. This album was played nonstop back in '69. Oh, man. That first track, What a Day. What an uplifting track. A great Richie Furay written track. Originally, Randy Meisner from the Eagles was in this band. He's on some of these tracks, some of the backup vocals. And he was supposed to be here, but he was airbrushed out, and they put the dog in on the front cover. So I guess there was some contention during the mixes where Richie Furay and Jim Messina didn't want Randy Meisner in the mixing sessions, and he got upset and left the band. Later joined the Eagles, and so later on the second Poco album, Timothy B. Schmidt would join the ranks of bass players. So, but the opening track, What a Day, is so catchy and such an incredible opening to a great, fantastic record. Poco picking up the pieces. The first track, What a Day, definitely always part of my DNA forever. From 1969. And I think one of the greatest opening tracks of all time, not just 1969, is Victoria by the Kinks from Arthur or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire. An absolute top 5 all-time album for me. When you talk about a perfect album from start to finish, this is it right here. Arthur or The Decline and Fall of the British Empire. And the lead-off track, Victoria, become a Kinks live staple throughout their career. So uplifting, so catchy, so infectious, and the whole album is just a masterpiece. So another one, absolutely part of my DNA forever. I still hear those opening guitar chords of Victoria. Still get really excited and euphoric. It's fantastic. The Kinks, Victoria, off the Arthur or Decline and Fall of the British Empire album from 1969. And this is a little signed autograph here by Ray Davies. I saw one of his last shows he did as a solo artist. He hasn't performed in years, but I saw him at the Canyon Club in Agoura, California, to a packed house playing solo. And right before he got in the tour bus, he just kind of scribbled his name on this album. And I said, thank you, Ray. So anyway, another great one, Victoria. Another album I heard a ton of when this came out was Street Noise by Brian Auger and the Trinity, featuring Julie Driscoll. A double album set of just amazing jazz fusion, pop, rock, blues, you name it. It's all over this album, featuring the incredible vocals of Julie Driscoll. Brian Auger's just absolute fantastic Hammond B3 organ playing. The first track on here is called Tropic of Capricorn, and it's a instrumental, and it kind of sets up the whole album in a really amazing way. It's really atmospheric, featuring those amazing Hammond B3 chords by and playing by Brian Auger. And this is one of the few instrumentals on the album. Most of the album features the vocals of Julie Driscoll, but this is just an amazing opening track. And after this, it's the songs Czechoslovakia and on, just one great track after another. If you've never heard this album, check it out. It's one of those albums that hardly anybody talks about, but it's one of those albums it's one of those 1001 albums I think you should hear before you die. It's just incredible. The vocals will knock your socks off. So the song is Tropic of Capricorn from the Street Noise album from Brian Auger and the Trinity, featuring Julie Driscoll. Another fantastic one. Another one, too, that just absolutely sends a chill up my spine to this day when I hear it, is the title track of A Salty Dog by Procol Harum. Oh, my God, what an incredible track. Incredible orchestral type song. You could call this maybe kind of proto-prog, call it what you want, but this album is just full of just a wide range spectrum of music. You've got, just down-home blues like Juicy John Pink or Crucifixion Lane. You've got orchestral things like A Salty Dog or Wreck of the Hesperus. You've got acoustic numbers like Too Much Between Us, Boredom. This album just has it all. It's a real mixed bag of amazing tracks by Procol Harum. This is their third album, but what we're highlighting here is the opening track, A Salty Dog. It's one of the most amazing opening tracks to any album from 1969 or any other year, featuring some of the greatest Gary Brooker vocals. Just like I said, to send a chill up your spine. It's so freaking amazing. So this has always been part of my DNA. This song, Salty Dog, the album, and always will be till the end of time. So Procol Harum, A Salty Dog from 1969. And last but not least, here's an album that I didn't hear until I was about 18. Now, when right before I graduated high school, I really got into the Velvet Underground. I was reading a lot about them in the Rolling Stone Record Guide, and the first album I picked up was Loaded. I loved that, but some of their other albums were deleted at the time. So for Christmas, I asked my mom for the third Velvet Underground album, and I got it. It's under the Christmas tree. And the first time I heard this album, though, was I was walking through Rhino Records in Westwood, California. And, anytime you go to a record store, they're playing an album, and as you're sifting through albums, you're listening. And this just knocked me out. The first side of this album, it was so different than Loaded and the Nico album. And it was hard to believe it was the same band, but there was something about the aura of this album that just knocked me out. The third Velvet Underground album. So the first time I heard this was when I was 18 at Rhino Records, and I heard Candy Says. And it just was like, wow, what a tune. And the doo-doo-wahs at the end. And then I heard What Goes On, and Some Kind of Love, and Pale Blue Eyes, and Jesus. And I was just like, I got to get this album. So I asked my mom for it for Christmas. She got me the imported version, which turned out to be, and I didn't know at the time, the Closet Mix, which is more like real in your face, but it still has that kind of quiet mix, but it's more in your face, a little different than the US mix. Fantastic album, and that opening track, Candy Says, is so freaking gorgeous, sung by bassist Doug Yule, not Lou Reed. But there you go. That's still been part of my DNA since I was 18 years old. And there you go. Those are 10 tracks from 1969 that became part of my DNA. Will always be part of my DNA. Do you have any similar stories or tracks from 1969 that blew you away and they're still a big part of your life? Let me know in the comments section. As always, thanks for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye.